99.9% of the time, that beautiful, picturesque Christmas scene is not the case. Hi, my name is Nick Whitaker. I'm a pastor in Santa Barbara, California, and let's talk about Christmas and the jealousy that comes along with it. You know all the advertisements, you know the pictures, the Christmas cards, happy couples next to fires, children around a tree, and then the overwhelming thought for a single person in that moment, why do I not have that? Why do they get to be happy? Why do I have to be sad? I'm going to challenge that, but let me empathize. It's frustrating. I get it. It's frustrating because it's everywhere. I mean, you can hardly watch a Christmas movie that doesn't have a subtle B-story romance plot thrown into it. In every Christmas movie, the end of it has to be that everybody arrives at the same place at the same time in front of the tree with the family. And so you watch all these Christmas movies and you're inculcated with this idea that love is important and it's happening on a timer. Is there any two things more frustrating to be a Christian and to be single in a church full of married people than told that there's a subplot to the Christian story, which is romance, and that it's on a timer? How many of us fear that we've waited too long, we've missed our shot? And Christmas just makes that feel even more powerful, even more than some of the other holidays, perhaps more than New Year's or Valentine's Day. Christmas does the trick. So let's take the practical aspect first. The first thing you need to understand and know about that Christmas story where the family's perfectly happy in front of the tree is that's not true. I've worked as a pastor for a little over a year. I primarily work with teenagers and families of teenagers, and I can tell you this for a fact. Being a parent is difficult. Extremely difficult. Being a husband or a wife it's extremely difficult. It's far more complicated. You're dealing with the needs of other people. And so when you think of that beautiful Christmas story around the tree, you're not thinking about the fact that, okay, well, the parents had to have a discussion about finance and whether they can afford those presents or not. They had to field questions about who goes to what house for what dinner, which people are or aren't invited. The kids might complain about the presents. They had to set up the tree, and somebody felt bad because they had to set up the tree while the other person was sitting down taking a nap. Anyway, all to say, 99.9% of the time, that beautiful, picturesque Christmas scene is not the case. The movies have it wrong. There's a more primary plot to Christmas than the love story and the timer. If you just needed a very practical reminder that that Christmas perfect scene is not true, there it is. Look, be well. Don't be jealous of that. Enjoy your life as a single person. But I know the jealousy is going to creep in. It does with everybody. The grass is always greener. And you might hear that as a single person and all those difficulties of marriage and family and say, well, yeah, that sounds better than being alone. Well, of course it does. The grass is always greener. But many of us would do anything to get rid of our problems and take on somebody else's problems. And so let's begin to unpack what this problem is, starting with measuring ourselves according to other people. But when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. If you are looking to see what your value is and your standing is by looking around at other people and how they're doing and what they have, then you are without understanding. Now, this isn't an insult that Paul is just sort of throwing away. He's not saying that they're fools. He's saying they lack the understanding. It's very specific. What he's saying is you lack the understanding that you ought to have about yourself. So how do we get that? Here's how we come back from that. There is a standard we ought to measure ourselves by, and it's not other people. I'm going to read from Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. This is what Paul says. He says, therefore, I appeal to you, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. And hear this, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. To be conformed to this world would be to say that the ideal thing I must aspire to is that beautiful Christmas scene. That's the pinnacle of human happiness and joy, is being able to sit at Christmas with a family and a wife or a husband. That is the pinnacle of it. And it's something we idolize in Western society so highly. We think the only worthy life is one in which you go and you make your own family and you start these things, and that's just not the case. So what Paul is saying is being transformed by renewal. What this requires is to live into a different Christmas story, the one we ought to be living in. That transformation is actually the standard we ought to be living by. Not holding ourselves to what other people do, but how closely are we holding to the right Christmas story, the transformed Christmas story? The primary plot of this Christmas story is what we ought to be seeing throughout Advent, which is the coming of the Lord Jesus, which is that everybody must be present at a particular time, at a particular place. And it is so much better than the advertisements you see, and even better, it's when you get to participate in. It's when you're involved in. See, there will be everybody gathered around a tree, but it will not be the Christmas tree. It will be the tree of life. It will be every tongue, every tribe, every nation, marrieds and singles, children and adults, gathered around one tree in one place. And we will be together in the warmth before the light, but it will not be the light of a temporary fire in the fireplace. It will be in that place, in that city. That is this Christmas story that we ought to be longing for. That is what Paul says we ought to discern is good and acceptable and true. And so to be transformed, to long for that story rather than conformed to want the advertisement story, is to look at those things and rejoice with them. Is to find that family that enjoys Christmas in a way that you so desperately long to enjoy it and simply share their joy. So that would be my Christmas challenge for you this year. If you wrestle with this bitterness and loneliness, I want you to go back and see the Christmas story as Christ lays it out. And here's a very practical thing you can do. Find that family, find that couple whose happiness makes you unhappy, and join their happiness. If you have a family of siblings and parents that you go to every Christmas, excellent. If your siblings are married, great. Ask them about their marriage. Play with your nieces and nephews and thoroughly enjoy that because it's a preview of what's to come. If you don't have that, then go and find a family or a group of people in your church whose happiness would typically make you unhappy and join their happiness. Because you can't measure yourself by them. You measure yourself by the grand Christmas story that you will participate in. You measure yourself by Christ. And it frees you to go and enjoy what used to make you so jealous and bitter. The result of this is fairly predictable. The thing that used to give you this agony will begin to give you joy, complete joy. Because Christmas is not about the celebration of the thing that's already happened. As much as it is about celebrating Christ's birth, we know that the reality of Christmas is the receiving of long expected coming of Jesus. And it's something that we wait for as well. It's the truer and better Christmas, the truer and better scene of people gathered around the tree as one that we're actually waiting for. And so make that your challenge this Christmas. Take the people that normally would make you unhappy by their perfect and beautiful family life and simply join their happiness, because that's what heaven's going to be like. Thanks for listening, and have a great Christmas.